الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على خيرة خلق الله أجمعين وهو رحمة الله للعالمين وهو أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الميامين المهديين المعصومين المظلومين المقتولين ولعنة الله دائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أيها الناس قد جاءكم الحق من ربكم فمن اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يدل عليها وما أنا عليكم بوكيل. We begin by extending our condolences and ahsan al-aza to the Imam of our time. May Allah hasten his reappearance on the night of the wafat of the wife of Ummul Baneen and the mother of Abi Fadl al-Abbas. Assalamu alaykum. I'll share a short little story with you just before I begin as to why this. I was telling one of the brothers in the car on the way here that, somehow I've always had this connection with Ummul Baneen. And it goes back a long time when I was in Karbala, in the holy city of Karbala. I remember walking by the haram of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam one night. Or no, it was Abi Fadl al-Abbas. Yes, it wasn't. It was Abi Fadl al-Abbas. And the ground was literally shaking. I mean, it was very intense. And I wasn't aware of the calendar. And I still remember seeing, it was so intense, the matam, the latmiya, that even the chandelier was shaking and moving in the haram. I said, what is going on? It's shaking. The whole haram of Fadl Abbas must have been packed. Thousands of people doing matam. And there was an amazing reciter, beautiful reciter, reciting matam inside, reciting the nohas inside the haram. I couldn't see. It's too many people. I mean, you could imagine, thousands of people. You can't see. I wasn't even in the haram. I was outside. I was walking by. I was outside. And he said to me, Basim Karbala has come tonight to Karbala to recite. I said, Basim has come. For what has Basim come? He says, it's the night of the wafat of Ummul Baneen. And I remembered I had never, until that point, experienced something like that in the haram of Abi Fadl al-Abbas. Maybe on the day of Ashur, but the night when they come to give their condolences to Abbas, salamullahi alayhi, and to his mother. And I just remember stepping into the haram that night, going to the dari of Abi Fadl al-Abbas, and just thinking about Ummul Baneen. It's such a powerful experience. It's such a life-changing experience, a transformative experience. When you feel that wila so deep within you, the story of Ahlul Bayt, the sacrifice of Ahlul Bayt, and the awliya of Ahlul Bayt, right? Those who loved them and supported them. And the topic that I've chosen for tonight is, what does it mean to live a life of truth? That when we look at the life of Ummul Baneen, we don't know too much about the details of her life. But what we do know is that her life and the children that she gave birth to, their entire life was devoted to one thing only: al-haq, the truth. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, O humankind, Ya ayyuhan nas, قل يا أيها الناس قد جاءكم الحق من ربكم. O humankind, the truth has come to you. It has come. The truth through the Quran and the Rasul. فَمَنْ اهْتَدَى فَإِنَّمَا يَهْتَدِي لِنَفْسِهِ. And the one who is guided, is on the right path, is doing it for themselves. And the one who is misguides themselves or chooses not to accept, they're doing it for themselves. Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayhi, and her children lived their life for that one central purpose. We may not know all the details of her life from her birth to her death in the way we know about Sayyidah Zainab, for example, or Sayyidah Zahra, or other important personalities to whom she was a servant, of course, both spiritually and, in every way. But what we do know is that everything she did for the sake of the truth. Everything that she lived for the sake of the truth. And they lived by the truth, and they died by the truth. And that's why we're here to remember her. And she lived by that one singular truth. And that one singular truth was represented by that one person. And that was the Imam of her age. That's it. She lived and died on that truth, and the children that she gave birth to were born with that singular purpose to serve that singular cause. All their decisions, their emotions, their life path was shaped around that central reality, that central haqq and haqiqat and reality. So the question is that I would ask tonight, because like I said, we don't have so many details in her life to go through. But a central question that I would ask is, how do we live our life in light of that truth? And what does true bravery look like? Right? We talk all the time about the bravery of her children, the courage of her children, the strength of her children. But what does that look like in reality? So tonight I want to reflect over some of these words. And in order to put all of this into context, we have to go to the moment when Ahlul Haram and the family of Hussein ibn Ali returns to Medina. Okay? After that whole journey of the Shahadat of Imam al-Hussein, Sham, Kufa, Sham, they now are returning to Medina. Alama al-Mamaqani narrates in Tanqi al-Maqal, one of the famous books of Rijal. He narrates a very interesting exchange that goes on between Bashir ibn Khadlam and Ummul Baneen. Bashir comes to Ummul Baneen in the city of Medina after Imam Zain al-Abidin and the Ahlul Haram and the family of Ahlul Bayt have come back. The family of the Prophet have returned to Medina. He comes to Ummul Baneen ostensibly with what? With the news that her sons have died. Her 4 boys are gone. They're dead. They're shaheed. They're martyrs, shuhada. But what transpires in this exchange will tell us the story of her entire life. So pay attention. Bashir comes to her with the intention to bring the na'i. Na'i meaning the message of death, the condolences basically, to her. Before he could tell her what has happened in Karbala, she says, أخبرني عن أبي عبد الله الحسين. Tell me about Hussein. Before her children, before her own sons, she tells Bashir, أخبرني عن أبي عبد الله الحسين. Tell me about Hussein ibn Ali. Just think about that. Her sons have gone to fight. everything that our children are the heart, are the beating heart of our life. Yet her first question is about her imam, not about her own children. Let that sink in for a moment. This tells us who is Baneen, or who was Baneen. This single episode, single narration, single exchange should be sufficient. He then gives her news that her sons have died. And she says something so powerful. She says that my heart is now broken. قُطِعَتْ نِيَاتَ قَلْبِي. The strings of my heart are torn, and my children lay there on the ground in Karbala. But now what she says is even more important. She says, كُلُّهُمْ فِدَاءٌ لِأَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. And all of them were a sacrifice for Abi Abdullah. This is the story of her life. This is the story of how she lived. So I would ask you in the room tonight, all of us as Shia, or the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, what does it take to utter words like that? We come here, we recite poetry and matam. May Allah bless you all for doing it. But what does it take when you or I are faced with something like this, and your first response is the imam of your time and not your children? Your first concern is your obedience or my obedience to the wilayah of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, to the path of Ahlul Bayt, to the Quran, to the Sunnah. And everything else is seen only through that lens. That is the true test in life. And that is the only moment in which we'll know whether we've passed or failed. And when we live in the presence of people who remind us of things like this, we learn to develop those abilities. And we learn to structure our own relationships with our own children day in and day out around the example of Ummul Baneen. We learn to prioritize our life in what we impart to our children, their goals, their ambitions, their life, our own ambitions. This is what it means to be Shia. This is what it means to be Ahlul Wilayah. This is what Baneen has taught us. She was not an infallible. She was not a ma'suma. She's not even of the status of Sayyidah Zainab. No one would claim. No one would compare the two. But she arrived at that status. She arrived at that status. So in the midst of chasing prestige and wealth and career and whatever it is that we want, we have to ask ourselves, what is it all for at the end of the day? What are we doing it for, and for whom are we doing it? This is what they teach us. They teach us that they live for values that transcend themselves. They live and die by those values, both. Because it's not always how we live, but it's how we live this world. It's not how we began, it's how we end. We don't know how it will end, though. And one of the things that we have to do, which again, the occasion of Baneen gives us this opportunity, as Ayatollah Sayyid Munir al-Khabbas tells us in his speech this week about this issue. One of the great scholars, teachers of Bahth al-Kharij and Najaf al-Ashraf, he says that we gather to remember Baneen for what? Because of the ihtimam we have for Ahlul Bayt. Because of our connection for Ahlul Bayt. Because it's an occasion to remember the sacrifice of her son and Hussein ibn Ali. But what does this mean at a family level? I'll read to you something Very, very, very beautiful. That same Alama Mamaqani who narrates in his Rijal this incident about Ummul Baneen and Bashir ibn Khadlam, he writes a beautiful book for his children. It's called The Mirror of Right Guidance, Mir'atul Rashad. It's a beautiful book. It's a wasiyah that he leaves, a will that he leaves for his children, and makes it wajib upon them to read it and act upon it. And he says, if you don't, you're aaq. You're basically, out of my pleasure, the realm of my pleasure and my love. He says, عَلَيْكَ بُنَيَّ بِإِقَامَةِ عَزَاءَ بِعَبْدِ اللَّهِ. He says, oh my son. Mamaqani was a great scholar, lived a couple hundred years ago. Less than that. He says, oh my son, it is incumbent upon you to remember Abi Abdullah every day and night. Hasabi Magdurik. On the basis of your ability. Even if preparations are not made for the azab. Alayka, it's incumbent upon you. Every day and night, he says. وَلَمْ يَقْدَرْ إِلَّا عَلَى قِرَاءَةِ كِتَابِ تَعْزِيَةٍ. Even if all you can do is just recite some words of musibah, few words, every day, he says, to your children. Because that's what he did with his children. That's what he reminded them of every single day. Shaykh Mamaqani is not talking about something that he himself did not raise his children with. He's saying, oh my children, this is a tarbiyah that I have given you. Now you must continue the tarbiyah and this upbringing with your children. He says, for surely, look at what he says now. This is coming to the point as to why Ummul Baneen was who she was. Because she recognized what I'm about to say, she recognized in her heart. He says, فَإِنَّهُ Azizullah. Because Hussein was the Aziz of Allah. He was the one that was given that dignity and power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very grand thing to say the Aziz of Allah. It's a very powerful thing. And because of that, he says, Hussein ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi reached a station of obedience to God that was unique to him. Unique to him. فَبَذَلَ نَفْسَهُ وَمَالُهُ وَعَيَالَهُ كُلُّهَا فِي سَبِيلِهِ تَعَالَى. And because of this obedience he had to God, this love for God, he gave up his life, his children, and his family. All of it فِي سَبِيلِهِ تَعَالَى. In the path of God. So because of this, Mamaqani says to his children, doing tawassul to him, turning to Allah through him, will give you khair fi darain. Will give you good in this world and the next world. Wal fawz fi nash'atain. And success and victory in this world and the next world. And that success and victory only comes with Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. That is the way to success and khair and fawz. Ummul Baneen understood this the moment Amir al-Mu'mineen asked for her hand. Or she already understood it, but the moment Amir al-Mu'mineen asked for her hand, this idea that khair and fawz and success and all true meaning of what is good in this world is through her Imam. And nothing else, and no one else has meaning like my Imam does. She understood this. And when somebody understands that, then they can sacrifice 4 children for the sake of their Ahlul Bayt. Then they can give their 4 sons. Because it's from here. It's an understanding that we only get to live this life in this world once. We only get one chance in this life, in dunya. Only one chance. So we want to get it right. We want to ask ourselves, I want to get it right here. So then I want to ask myself, what and for whom am I living for? How are my values shaped? What am I imparting to my kids? What are the values that I'm transmitting to them? Am I living a life that's worth while of respect? Even for my own kids in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is how Ummul Baneen raised her children. Of course with Ummul Mu'mineen. But she was the womb that gave birth to those children. And she understood that simple fact as a mother and a wife. Her life was not a personal project for some kind of activism. It was, I want to meet my Lord. I want to love God. And if I want to love God, I have to do it through the commander of the faithful. Through Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba. Through Hussein ibn Ali, salamullahi alayhim ajma'in. If I want to meet God, this is what I have to do. So thus, my motherhood, my role as a mother, and my role as a wife is then structured, formed, and given life through the hayat with Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. That's what happens. Now imagine a marriage on that foundation. A family on that foundation. We would have few problems. Very few. Or less. I'm not saying none, but less. Everybody has their own maslahat. And somehow that maslaha comes before the imam of the time. Somehow he's at the end of the line, the end of the train, the last car, or towards the end. And then we ask ourselves why we don't feel khair fi darain wal fawz fi nash'atain. Good in this world and the next, and success and victory here and in the next. This is what it means when Allah says the truth has come to you, O humankind. Whoever accepts it and is guided by it, does so for themselves. Whoever rejects it or chooses to go another path, take the path of misguidance, that's on them. All it takes is to understand that. And when someone understands that, as Imam Sadiq tells us, إِذَا غَضَبَ لَمْ يُخْرِجْهُ غَضَبَهُ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. That even when they become angry, their anger never takes them out of the truth. Or when they are pleased, their rida or their pleasure never takes them towards something that is false, displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That truth becomes the nexus or the pivot upon which everything operates. Even if it be against their own interests, their own worldly interests. Regardless. Because why? Why? I want you to think, why? Because it is through that, my dear brothers and sisters, that they find freedom and happiness. They finally feel released. Because they only owe obligations to one person, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. La ilaha illahu. And everything is shaped through the haqq of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the hujjah of Allah, His proof, is the gateway to reach Allah. His Prophet and the Imams. but it's about how we think about it. And then we search and search and search for things, but we never really become liberated in the spiritual sense, because we're always thinking, I owe this person, this person, this person, oh, this person. What if I don't do this? This person will feel bad. Well, is Allah pleased with it or not? That's a question. How many times this question comes to me? How many times? Oh, but my son will not like it. My wife will not like it. My husband will not like it. I'm like, but is it pleasing to Allah? Is it something the Imam would want from you? Is it something that our ulama and our maraja recommend? Yes. But it will hurt their feelings because their culture or the way they're brought up, that's how they've been doing it for all these years. So that person yet is not free. They still have divided loyalties. They're splitting their loyalties between the Imam and Jahl and Jahiliyat. Splitting their bets. And they're not happy. Day in and day out, mushkila ba'da mushkila. Always problems. And they come and say, oh, Maulana, we want talaq, this, that, whatever. It's an akhlaqi problem. Because Allah wasn't there to begin with. Where is Allah? It sounds simple, but it's not. I accept that. But when someone truly feels this in their heart, it's transformative. And thus when the Imam came to her and said, or rather when Bashir bin Khadlam came, not Imam Zain al-Abidin, he was in the tent. When he came to her, her heart was already dissolved in the heart of Abu Abdullah. أخبرني عن Abu Abdullah, tell me about my Imam. Children second. So if we're here to remember Ummul Baneen, we have to ask ourselves, if we qualify for her intercession, what is the level of our attachment to the deen? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Imam, through the Ahlul Bayt. Let me give you just a simple example here tonight. And it might ruffle a few feathers, but I've told brothers already, I don't mind ruffling feathers anymore. I'm not the Imam of this masjid, so I can ruffle a few feathers, and I know Shaykh Ja'far wouldn't mind. People send their kid to Islamic schools, right? Parents, right? Tonight's about Ummul Baneen. She was a mother of 4 kids, right? Living life by truth, right? What does that look like? People send their kids to an Islamic school. Fine. Yet what they do in the life of their home does not reflect the values that are taught in that institution. This can happen. It happens, right? I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying it happens. And then when they're told, you may not be a fit for this institution, people get offended. But then that same person will want to come for the majlis of Abi Fadl al-Abbas Ummul Baneen. Come, ahlan wa sahlan. Of course, the door of Tawbah is always open. The gate of Hussein is the gate of salvation. There's no doubt about that. But I would ask that brother or sister, have you checked yourself at the door? Have you looked at your own severe, blatant inconsistencies? Do we think that having certain kind of art at home, whether it be Azar Khana, and there's nothing wrong with that, it reminds us of Ahlul Bayt, of their Azar, absolutely. Is that the pride of our life, or is my hijab and my salah and my siyam and my zakat and my obedience to Allah and living my life in that way the pride of my life or not? Sometimes we miss the forest for the trees. Because maybe for some, it's a cultural experience and that's it. It's not really a spiritually transformative experience. It may not be. Maybe even sending a kid to an Islamic school is an ethnic experience. Okay. Just be honest about it, though. Different flavors for different people. But at least be honest about it, that it's just an ethnic experience. Then maybe it's not the right fit. Maybe better just going to an ethnically diverse institution, as opposed to a school which is run under the flag of the Imam of the time. People need to face these realities in order to find God. We won't find Allah with that sincerity until we face these realities face to face. And these are uncomfortable things. But why are we here to remember Ummul Baneen then? What is the point? Is it just a ritual and everyone in here out and car, chai and home? We've come to give condolences to the Imam of our time on the night of the wafat of Ummul Baneen. So we as mu'mineen, yes, we're fallible. We have mistakes. But we should be on the process of becoming better or trying to be better. Or at the very least acknowledging those failures. Like the very least. At least acknowledging that maybe it's all just a cultural, ethnic experience. Throw a little bit of artwork and religious poetry. But it hasn't transformed. Because it's not ultimately about returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For Ummul Baneen, that's all it was. Because they understood the messenger has come. He has brought the revelation, which is the Quran. And the salvation of the human soul and eternal afterlife rests on understanding and molding their soul to that revelation and the sunnah of that messenger. They understood that. She understood that and her children understood that. And thus their family life, and of course that's why Ummul Mu'mineen chose her, for that kind of a bravery that's rooted in something like that. That family life is very different from other people's family life, from Banu Umayyah, very different. What do we ask Allah for? Let's look at Ziyarat Ashura. فَأَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ الَّذِي أَكْرَمَنِي بِمَعْرَفَتِكُمْ. Right? I ask Allah, the one who has honored me by knowing you, that I thank Allah because He has honored. أَكْرَمَنِي بِمَعْرِفَتِكُمْ. That Allah has chosen me to know you. Allah has chosen me and you for being here tonight. This is what the Imam is saying here. أَكْرَمَنِي بِمَعْرِفَتِكُمْ وَمَعْرِفَةِ أَوْلِيَائِكُمْ. And to know those who loved you, those who are obedient to you, those who served you, the awliya of Ahlul Bayt. This is the ni'mah of Islam. I was just speaking to one of the brothers in the car, and we're so blessed to be on the path of Ahlul Bayt. So blessed. Allah has blessed us without any measure. For us to have this opportunity to remember the most courageous, strongest, spiritually enlightened, wise men and women that ever walked this earth. So the question is now, what do we do with it? How does that translate into my life? How will I wake up tomorrow or go to sleep tonight? That's what matters at the end of the day. Otherwise, the rest of it is just a reminder. And that's it and nothing else. And that has value in itself. But without the second part, it's just hanging in the air. Look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. This verse is very important. Very beautiful verse. I forgot the verse number here, but you can look it up. وَلَا تَجِدُوا قَوْمًا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Allah says that you will not find a people that believe in Allah and the last day, يُوَادُونَ مَنْ حَادَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. That they have love towards those who hate Allah and His Messenger, or those who have enmity towards Allah and His Messenger. لو كانوا آباءهم أو أبناءهم أو إخوانهم أو عشيرتهم. Allah says, even if it be their fathers, even if it be their sons, even if it be their brothers, even if it be their tribe. That was a time in Arabia where your parents, your brothers, and your children and your tribe were everything to you. Your ethnicity and your tribe was what made you who you are. Here Allah is saying, none of that matters if they're on the wrong side of the equation. None of that matters. This is from the Quran. أُولَٰئِكَ كَتَبَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ الْإِيمَانِ. These are those whom Allah has written into their heart, inscribed in their heart's faith. وَيَدُهُمْ بِرُوحٍ مِّنْهُ. And He assists them with the special spirit, with the special faculty from Him. يُدْخِلُهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ. And He brings them into a paradise under which rivers flow. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. They will be in this paradise forever. Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. أُولَٰئِكَ حِزْبُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ حِزْبَ اللَّهِ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And this is the party of God, not the political party. This is the party of God. This is the group of God belonging to Allah. And they are the successful ones. My dear mu'mineen and mu'minat, this is a description of Ummul Baneen and Abu Fadl Abbas. Only the one whose iman is in here so inscribed would worry more about Abu Abdullah than her own children. And tonight we will remember her sons. We read in the Maqatil that as Abbas noticed the enemies getting closer, he began setting his brothers out one by one. The first one was Abdullah. He was 25 years old. He goes out to fight, and Abbas tells his brother before he goes to fight, all right? The brothers go, Abbas's brothers go ahead of him to fight. And he goes out to fight and he says, go to fight until you are martyred. Subhanallah, keep going to fight. I want to see you fighting until you achieve shahada and martyrdom. Hatta araka qatlan, until I see that you are killed. And as he goes out to fight, look at what he says. Ana ibn dhil najda wal ifdal. That I am the son of the one who has this great honor. He's talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen. ذاك علي الخير ذو الفعال. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sayf Rasulullah dhul nakal. This is the sword of Rasulullah. He managed to kill 100 or more enemies. Maqatil tell us until Hani bin Thabit hit him over the head and killed him. Then came Uthman ibn Ali. He was 21 years old. This was the other son of Baneen, Uthman. He was the middle son of Ali and Baneen. He went out to fight, and again he said, Abbas turned to his brother, he said, go out and fight. And he fought until Khuli fired an arrow into his side, causing him to fall off of his horse. And then Khuli came and beheaded him and cut his head. Then was Ja'far bin Ali, Imam al-Husayn's brothers. These are all his brothers going one by one on the day of Ashura. Right? We are sending our condolences to Ummul Baneen, who was then killed by Hani bin Thubayt al-Hadrami. Ja'far was the son of Ummul Baneen. He was 19 years old. He went out to fight and he said, I am Ja'far, the son of the one who has the most highest attributes. Dhul Ma'ali, Ibn Ali al-Khair, Dhul Nawali, Dhak al-Wasi, Dhul Nisa wal-Wali. And he goes on to recite beautiful poetry until Khuli fired an arrow into his eye. Salamullahi alayhi. The arrow landed in his eye, into a part of his head, executing him. Then as the brothers of Abbas are going, Salamullahi alayhim, now Imam goes with Abbas to the Furat. They are blocked off. An arrow is fired by al-Darimi or Darimi at Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, landing in the shoulder of Hussein ibn Ali. Hussein takes the arrow out of his body, filling his palms of hand with blood. At this point, Abbas looks at Imam al-Hussein and asks his brother, he says, Ya akhi, hal min rukhsa? Oh my brother, do you give me permission to go out to fight? At this point, Imam begins to cry, salamullahi alayhi. فَبَكَى الْحُسَيْنِ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Imam begins to cry profoundly. Our master Hussein is now crying. Why? Because he could hear, عَلَيْنَا عَتَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْنَا عَتَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ. Upon us is the thirst of Hussein ibn Ali, salamullahi alayhi. That this was the consciousness that they had. This was the awareness that they had. And he turns to Abbas, he says, Ya akhi anta sahibul liwa'i. Oh my brother, you are my flag bearer. What am I to do? He says that what you are proposing gives me chest pain. Qad daqa sadri, gives me tightening in my chest. But he says, if you must go, then go to fetch some water for these children. Abbas salamullahi alayhi goes forth. He pleads with Umar ibn Sa'ad for water. He says, Oh Umar ibn Sa'ad, here is al-Hussein, the son of the daughter of the Messenger of Allah. You have killed his companions and family, and here are his children suffering from thirst. Give them some water, for thirst has burnt their hearts. In some narrations, this is not from Abbas but others, that they turned to Banu Umayya and told them that even the dogs are drinking the water. Even the pigs are rolling around in the water, yet the daughters of Hussein ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi are denied that same water. Even the khanazir and the kilab are rolling around, keeping cool in that water, while the daughters of Hussein ibn Ali are crying out, Al-Atash, 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 Ya Aba Abdullah. And this was all in the mind of Abbas salamullahi alayhi Abu Fadl. This was all on in his mind as he darted for the Furat. It was blocked off by 4,000 men. He gallops towards the Furat. He reaches the Furat, and as you know the narration, he puts his hand into the Furat and he says, Oh soul, there is nothing left after Hussein. Ba'd al-Hussein huni. He fills his bag with water. He darts back to the tent of the thirsty children. Imagine his gallops. This is a night of Wafat of Ummul Baneen. Think like you are in the haram of Abu Fadl Abbas. You're giving azaa and condolences to Abbas alayhi salam. You're turning to Ummul Baneen saying, Assalamu alayki, Ya Ummul Baneen. We read, Qata'u alayhi at-tariq, and they cut your son off from every side. وَأَحَاطُوا بِهِ مِنْ كُلِّ جَانِبٍ, and they cover him from every corner. They begin firing arrows and spears. They begin firing at him from every direction. Nawfal al-Azraq now cuts his right hand off. The hand of Abbas falls onto the ground. Abbas transfers the water bag into his other hand. Ya Ummul Baneen, how you must have felt when the news came to you in Medina. Abbas says, Wallah, if you cut off my right hand, I shall forever protect my religion. Look at his allegiance to Islam. Look at his allegiance to the deen. He begins carrying the water bag with his teeth. But then an arrow is fired into the water bag. The water is now coming out. They're firing lances and spears and arrows at his body. And he's fighting as much as he can. Abbas now falls off of his horse. Someone sneaks up to him and takes an iron over his head, salamullahi alayhi, and he says, Help your gharib brother Adrak. Adrak akhak al-gharib. Adrak akhak al-gharib. Abbas salamullahi alayhi is screaming for his brother. Alayka minni salam Aba Abdullah. Hussein hears the screams of his brother and he says, Wa Abbas, waha, waha. Abbas is screaming. Hussein is screaming.
He now arrives at the body of Abbas. Listen to these final words, mu'mineen. He says, oh my brother, oh the light of my eyes, oh my partner, you are my trusted supporter. Ya akhi, you were devoted to your brother. Allah will give you a cup of heavenly water, oh my brother. Some riwayat say that he took the head of Abbas, salamullahi alayh, and he put it into his lap, Ya Hussein. And he said, Ya Nur Aini, Ya Abbas, Ya Nur Aini. Imagine this moment. He is just crying with his brother. And he says, Al-an inkasara dhahri wa qillat hilati. That now my back is broken and my patience has waned. But mu'mineen, I want to conclude with you tonight. On that moment with Ummul Baneen, let us return to Ummul Baneen in Medina. In Medina to Nabi, when the news comes to her, there is a narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that when the news came to her, she recited the following poetry. She says, woe to you, la tad'uni wayka Ummul Baneen. Do not call me Ummul Baneen anymore, for I was known as the den that kept the lions. Kanat bunun li. She says, yes, I had children. I was known by these children. وَالْيَوْمَ أَصْبَحْتُ وَلَا مِنْ بَنِينِي. But today I have woken up and I have no more children now. She says, there were 4 like 100 eagles. قَدْ وَاسُلُوا الْمُوتْ بِقَطْعِ الْوَتِينِ. But each of my children met their death with their jugular veins cut. She says that the spears competed to pierce my children's body. وَكُلُّهُمْ أَمْسَى صَرِيعًا تَعِينِي. But then she says, mu'mineen, listen to this final line. She says, يَا لَيْتَ الشَّعْرِ أَكْمَأَ أَخْبَرُوا. She says, I wish I knew that there was more than meets the eye. There was more to know. Why? بأن عباس قطيع اليمين. Because my Abbas had his right hand cut, salamullahi alayhi. Think of the ground of Al-Baqi, the ground of Medina shaking from the poetry and the ritha of Ummul Baneen, salamullahi alayhi. Salamu alayki ya Ummul Baneen wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Matim Hussein, Matim Abbas, Matim Ummul Baneen.